All right, welcome to section 2.1. This is our first section of unit 2. And this section is called conditional statements. So let's get right into what is a conditional statement. A conditional statement is a logical statement that has two parts, the hypothesis and the conclusion. Now typically we're going to write these conditional statements as a if blank then blank form. Okay, so an example of that would be if it is sunny, then it is not raining. Okay, so that is a conditional statement. It is an if blank then blank form. So let's talk about this conditional statement. What is the hypothesis of this statement? So the hypothesis is what comes after the then, or the if, what comes after the if. And for this example that we had here, what comes after the if is going to be it is sunny. The conclusion is what comes after the then portion of our statement. So again, back to our original example here, what comes after the then is it is not raining. Let's talk negation real fast. Negation is what we are saying the opposite of that statement is. So typically you're either going to add or take away a not. So for example here, the negation of our conclusion is that it is raining. Right? We just took away that not. The negation of our hypothesis is that it is not sunny. So you can either add or take away that not. Equivalent statements. So let's talk about equivalent statements. Equivalent statements are statements with the same truth value. So as an example here, I would say that my walls are white. That is a true statement. I could also say that my walls are not blue. That is also a true statement about my walls. Perpendicular lines. So perpendicular lines are two lines that intersect to form a right angle. So let's see what that would look like here. So here are my two lines. We can label these lines line L and line M. Okay, so they intersect here and they form a 90-degree angle. Those are perpendicular lines. The nice thing about perpendicular lines is that every angle is going to be 90. So let's talk about the converse. So first I want to go back and I want to take my original statement here. And I'm going to copy that down here so that we know what my original statement was. Okay, so my original statement was if it is sunny, then it is not raining. The converse, all it does is take my if-then statement and it's going to flip my hypothesis and my conclusion. So my new converse would say, and again I'm going to keep my if and then in the same place, if it is not raining, then it is sunny. So my hypothesis and conclusion do not change at all. The only thing that changes is the form or the placement of them. So my conclusion is now going to come after my if. My hypothesis is now going to come after my then. Okay? Let's look at the next one. My next one is the inverse. Inverse, all we're doing is we're negating both my hypothesis and my conclusion from that original conditional statement. So again, we have my original conditional statement up there. If it is sunny, then it is not raining. In fact, I'm going to highlight that just so we remember that that is our original statement. Okay, so all I'm going to do is add or take away that not. So if it is not sunny, then it is raining. So for my hypothesis, I added in the not, and for my conclusion, I took away that not. All right, so let's talk contrapositive. Contrapositive is a nice way to think of counter means opposite. So we're flipping our conclusion or hypothesis, and then positive, you think like positive, yay, but in fact, we're going to negate them. Okay, so again, back to that original statement. So if it is sunny, then it is not raining. So first I'm going to flip them. So if it is not raining, then it is sunny, and I'm going to negate them. So if it is raining, then it is not sunny. Let's write that down. If it is raining, then it is not sunny. Beautiful. Biconditional. Biconditional is when a statement and its converse are both true. We can rewrite it as in blank if and only if blank. And typically that first blank is your hypothesis, the second blank is your conclusion. So again, looking at that original statement that we have up here in orange, if it is sunny, then it is not raining. I'm going to take away the if, and I'm going to take away the then. I'm going to replace that then with if and only if. So let's write that down. So it is sunny. That's my hypothesis. If and only if. And then I'm going to write my conclusion. It is not raining. Beautiful. Okay, let's move on to some examples. So that is the end of our vocabulary. We're moving on to some examples. So you're going to have to flip through your packet a little bit to find this first section of examples. It's going to say 2.1 right up here at the top. Okay, example 1. Identify the hypothesis and conclusion, then rewrite the conditional statement in the if-then form. So, there's a couple different ways that we can go about this. So this first statement says all birds have feathers. Okay, well my hypothesis is that everything is a bird. Okay, my conclusion is if you are a bird, then you're going to have feathers, right? So let's write that down. Hypothesis, all birds. And we'll write this in a little bit better English here in a minute. And my conclusion is have feathers. Okay, so let's go about and figure out how we can write our conditional statement here. So I'm going to write my if first. So if, now all birds and then have feathers, that doesn't make sense. So if an animal is a bird, now we can write that conclusion. Then it has feathers. Beautiful. Okay, this next one, my if is already there. If you are in Houston. Okay, so that is going to be my hypothesis. If it has an if or if it has a then, the thing that comes after that is always going to be either your hypothesis or conclusion, depending on what you have. So I already have an if, so what comes after my if is already going to be my hypothesis. So you are in Houston. My conclusion is going to be the other part, you are in Texas. Okay, so let's go ahead and write my conditional statement. So again, my if portion is already there. If you are in Houston. Okay, now I'm going to write then in my conclusion. Then you are in Texas. Beautiful. All right, let's move on to example 2. Example 2, they want us to write the negation of the statement. So again, adding or taking away that not. So the ball is red. The opposite of this is the ball is not red. Again, I'm adding or taking away that not. Okay, the cat is not black. Look, this one has a not, so I'm going to take away that not. So for this one, it would be the cat is black. All right, example 3. They want us to, given this statement here, if you are a guitar player, then you are a musician. They want us to first write the converse, inverse, and contrapositive. And then once we have written those, we want to decide if they are true or false. So let's go through each one. So converse, again, is going to be just flipping them. I'm going to take my hypothesis and conclusion and flip where they are. So that would be if you are a musician, then you are a guitar player. Okay, so for this one, we have to decide if it is true or false. So we have to think of what we call a counterexample. We're going to talk more about that in our next section. But a counterexample is just something saying, hey, this is false. So is there a time when you can be a musician but not a guitar player? Yes. You can play so many instruments and be a musician. For example, if you play the violin, then you are a musician. So this one would be false. All right, now we're going to talk about inverse. So inverse is when all we're doing is we're taking our original conditional statement and we are going to negate it. So we're going to add in or take away that not. So if you are not a guitar player, then you are not a musician. Okay, so for this one would be false. Again, a counterexample would be if you play you could play the violin and you would still be a musician. Or you could play, let's see, if you play, yeah, let's stick with that one. All right, next, contrapositive. So contrapositive is when you're going to flip and negate. So for this one, if you are not a musician, then you are not a guitar player. Okay, this one happens to be true, right? If you are not a musician, that means you don't play any instruments. So, therefore, you are probably and definitely not a guitar player. All right, let's move on to our last example here. Rewrite the definition of perpendicular lines as a single biconditional statement. So remember, biconditional statement, we're taking the if and the then, and we're taking them out. And we're going to replace then with if and only if. And I sometimes abbreviate if and only if with IFF, just keeping you in the loop. Okay, so two lines intersect. To form a right angle. If and only if they are perpendicular lines. Okay, so all I'm doing is I'm taking out the if and the then. I'm leaving the form, the hypothesis, and the conclusion in the same place. And I'm going to replace that then with if and only if. All right, that concludes our notes for today. So please look up above.